Hello everyone, and welcome to this video, which is in our human game series but also our engine opening series. We're looking at the game between Ahluwalia and Ahluwalia-Price in the Oxford versus Cambridge Varsity match, but it's also concluding, it's probably the third and final part of our look at the Cobra Sicilian. The Cobra Sicilian, what is that? Well, take a look at the two previous videos if you don't know. It's this line, knight c3, knight c6, knight db5, and then bishop c5. Now, actually, there was a comment in the YouTube video comments by Michael, and he said, "Well, how about this line, knight d6, king e7, and now not knight takes c8, which is what Antonis Sapolskis played against Gwilym, when actually the engine's already like black after knight c8, rook c8. Black's got some very nice play on these central dark squares with moves like queen c7 to e5." But instead of knight takes c8, then bishop f4. And this is Stockfish's first choice in this position, and it was the subject of a New in Chess yearbook review, yearbook 139. And e5, knight f5, king f8, and bishop g5. And Michael was saying that he didn't like these positions very much. Well, bishop b4 is in that New in Chess yearbook review. Actually, the engines don't even touch it at all. I've got quite a lot of analysis which I'll upload as the third part of the Cobra Sicilian. Yeah, I mean it's decent, but I think that the engine's preference and also Gwilym's preference, because thanks very much, Gwilym. Gwilym replied in the comments to the video and just said about the line that he preferred, and he was talking about this one leading to Sveshnikov type positions. And I think he's absolutely right. I think Gwilym's absolutely right there, because this is the engine's favourite line: knight e3, bishop e6, bishop e2, h6 takes, castles. And now queen h4 was one idea that the engines were playing, but also g6 as well, which looks quite natural to me. And well, knight d5, queen d8, bishop c4, king g7. We've really got a sort of a Sveshnikov type position here, which is not at all bad for black. Actually, the game was quite interesting. This was Dragon against Stockfish, and I'll just show you how that went, because there was quite an interesting positional idea from Stockfish. King h1, rook f8, queen d3, and now this pawn sacrifice b5. Quite unexpected, but black takes on d5 with the bishop. And the point is that, there's this weak pawn on f2, so knight d5 will just be able to take on a1 and take the pawn on f2. So white takes back with the pawn. And then black plays takes, and then this very unexpected move, bishop e3. And then knight g8, very typical Stockfish maneuver. It's the sort of thing that you don't quite understand, what are you doing and why, but it becomes clear afterwards. Use of the rook's pawn, just to weaken up the king side a bit, and then this move f5 and knight e4, and we've got this great outpost on e4 for the knight. And this is, easy compensation for black, and in actual fact here the engines were agreeing a draw. Do you want to start something like queen b6? Queen e7. I think I'd rather be black than white in this position. A lot of potential counterplay on those dark squares. So yeah, I mean, if you don't particularly like Sveshnikov positions, I can imagine you don't particularly like this. But to be honest, this is getting a Sveshnikov type position, avoiding about 3/4 of the theory. So I mean, it's pretty decent practical choice, I think. I had wondered whether Ahluwalia would play this, but he actually played bishop f4, and well, I mean, if you're interested in this theory, do take a look at the two previous videos, because we look at this in some depth. And Ahluwalia chose one of the main lines, h4, and after b5, Gwilym had a game with h5 against Gary Lane before, but Ahluwalia played knight b3, which is one of the main ideas. Feels a little bit weird moving the knight away from the centre, but the knight is sort of looking all the same at some weak dark squares, and the queen can now retreat back to d2 if it gets chased away by knight e8, instead of having to go to f4, g3 or b4. So Gwilym played knight e8 here quickly, and we had a whole discussion about this. The engine's tending to want to delay that move, play the move bishop b7, for example, and maybe later play bishop c6 and knight e8, for example. But Gwilym played knight e8 very quickly. He also did the same thing against Gary Lane. And after queen d2, played queen c7. And again, we looked at a lot of possibilities here in the previous videos. Here, knight f6 was one idea in particular the engines were keen on. So queen c7, h5, and now a very crucial decision here. Gwilym played a novelty here, d6, allowing white to play h6. And as we saw in the previous videos, in principle the engines are not happy about this. They feel that white plays the move a3 now, stopping this counterplay b4. And essentially they seem to feel that white was pretty much in control. I mean, giving themselves something like a 75% expected score from here. So yeah, in general, you'd say that maybe for future games you'd look for an improvement here for black earlier. Although I think, as you can see from the course of the game, it's not exactly child's play for white to put this sort of stuff away. Ahluwalia played f4, and here the engines really wanted white to play b4 here. The reason for that is that the engines always consider that if you want to answer b4 with anything, it's got to be knight a4. If you move the knight back to e2, black's counterplay with a5, then the engines are kind of happy with black's position. But after knight a4, rook b8, actually this knight is really stranded. And we saw in lots of other lines that the engines were really clever, about making this knight on a4 work, either doing it, before black's played d6 and you can bring the knight into play, or with all sorts of ideas with queen f4, queen g5, and then all sorts of pins and counterattacks against the knight on e7 just to make it work. But here, when white's played f4, it doesn't work, and actually black's just threatening queen c6, winning the knight on a4. So the engines just want to play e5 as a pawn sacrifice, just to free access to the c5 square again. So b4 would have been a good move. Gwilym played something that's a very good positional move. e5 makes perfect sense. You swapped off the dark squared bishops, so you're putting your central pawns on dark squares to get some control back again. But again here, I think that the engines wanted a3 again. And again, just keeping control. I mean, the point is difficult for black to create counterplay when white plays the move a3. It's quite difficult to get in b4 because it's difficult to get in a5. And white's just going to play bishop e2, rook f1, g4, and just storm the kingside pawns, really gain space like that. A little bit similar to what happened in the game, and it's quite difficult for black to deal with. What Ahluwalia did was a little bit strange here. He played the move knight d5. I presume that was really to kind of anticipate b5 to b4. So from that point of view, it's sensible. But, just playing knight d5, ed5, you sort of, one of the white's big advantages really was that this knight was tied down to defending this pawn. And, when you're giving up this lovely square on d5, occupying it with a pawn, you're also blocking the d file. So yeah, it really felt, whilst I was doing the commentary, all of the assembled throng kind of felt that this looked a little bit weird, and that really, probably black was doing all right again now. Gwilym's next move, maybe not the best. I mean, bishop f5 felt quite natural. Hitting the c2 pawn, and maybe thinking of bringing the knight f6 into e4, for example. And c3, queen b6. This was an engine game, dragon against stockfish. Rook e1, f6, g3 played, and then a5, bishop d3, bishop g4. And similar to the game, but somehow black's a lot further, if you see what I mean. Bishop g4 was played, and now Ahluwalia played something very interesting. I think he wasn't keen after bishop e2 to sort of get the queen distracted away from the dark squares. You sort of feel that the queen should be on the dark squares because, well, there's dangerous squares around the king, for example. And, for example, black could maybe just take on f4 in this position. And, this was one quite funny idea. Queen d8, looking to bring the queen to g5 and attack that pawn on f6. Or if you go queen g4, then this was a game dragon against stockfish. Queen takes f4, knight h5. And again, queen d4 would be a natural move, but then you go queen g5 check, and you're trying to pick up this pawn. So white obviously wasn't keen with that and played a very interesting idea, rook e1. Just with the idea of playing bishop e2 next, and then you're just going to take back with a rook on e2, and you're going to keep your queen on those dark squares. So rook c8 was played. I was actually looking at knight f6 in this position because I thought that after takes, d6, queen c6, rook e5, you'd be able to just regain your pawn with rook d8. Well, the engine does a little shimmy with rook e8 and rook d8. I'm not quite sure why that is, but that basically does hold. So I think that knight f6 would have been quite sensible. After rook c8, bishop e2. Here I think Gwilym just had just a little moment of inattention here, which is not too surprising, to be honest, because we had the same moment of inattention in the commentary. Because after Stockfish wants to play bishop d7 and then play f5 and then play the knight to f6, you know, just gain some central territory, try and get an outpost for your knight on e4. Gwilym played bishop f5, but this actually led into a rather unpleasant idea, bishop d1. Yeah, I mean, actually, we kept on getting confused, thinking there was a rook on d1 rather than a bishop. This is a very nice move, actually. It defends the c2 pawn. The fact that you're not playing c3 means that your queen is still eyeing the b4, a5 square, so hard to get these moving. And you're just threatening g4 as well, just chasing away the bishop and gaining space. And I was trying to make knight f6 work as again, you know, in this position, but actually the engine just pointed out rook f1, which is really strong. I mean, White's just threatening rook takes f5 followed by queen g5. Actually, the engine thinks that the best move here in this position is to play knight to e8. Okay, you're trying to head round to d6, but you know we go g4. You know, we go knight a5, and you know, White is basically in control. You can play bishop f3 followed by knight c6 as well. So actually things are turning a little bit nasty here. Gwilym played f6 and then g4, bishop d7, and well, I mean, I've been quite optimistic with you know, sort of thought, you know, that Black was getting out of it after Ahmadip played knight d5, but here, you know, everyone was quite you know, quite negative again, of course. And well, you know, we just thought that a simple move like rook f1 and then just prepare f5 for one would be a good idea. And you can even go for, you know, a complete overall bind, really. You can go for knight a5 and b4 afterwards. You know, and it's just going to be really hard for Black to shake any of that. Very hard to get these pieces into play. And there is also a lot of attraction in keeping this tension. I mean, Black's not really going to play e takes f4. And, you know, you don't rush f5. You might even get g5 sometime as well. So, you know, I think that a simple move like rook f1 would have been, yeah, you know, quite scary for Black. I'm not quite sure about the plan that Ahmadip was going for, but you know, I think nerves played a role here, and White, and also I think, to be honest, you know, I said in the preview that a lot of these players had not actually played very much at all. I mean, they're busy with studying. You know, chess has to take second place, and you know, I think here that you see a little bit of yeah, you know, a little bit of rustiness, not having played and not really quickly finding, you know, a simple good setup for your pieces, because Ahmadip sort of, you know, instead of bringing a rook to the f-file in one move, he brought it in 3 moves. And Gwilym's sharp on this stuff. He played the move a5, and all of a sudden Black's position is starting to make sense. When you get in this a5 move, you know, you start getting this counterplay. It's what the engine's always said, you know, if you get in b4 and then a5, a4, your position's making sense, and this is rather difficult. The problem is that queen a5, which would just normally work, loses the rook to queen f2, and knight takes a5 loses to the very sneaky rook d4, queen c3, and well, rook a4 is quite strong, and b4 is also very strong. So in both cases, White's losing a piece. So all of a sudden, actually, White would need to start thinking about how to keep the balance. It's just gone very, very quickly, which I think probably shows, you know, some of the inherent dynamism of these positions for Black. You know, even if you get a bad position, it can turn quickly, you know. So the engine's suggesting takes, and queen e3, just trying to exchange off queens, and that, you know, there are some little holes in Black's position that could still be exploited there. Although, to be honest, takes, knight d6 looks very pleasant to me. You know, so but king b1 was played, and now the engine's really liked Black's position. Yeah, Gwilym here ended up doing something really, really risky. Yeah, knight c7 was what we were looking at in the commentary. Just felt, sort of nice, and you've got ideas like rook d4, maybe even queen d4, followed by picking up this pawn. And well, White's definitely struggling here. White's really got a challenge here to hold the position together. Gwilym played rook d4, queen e3, and I was still expecting knight c7, which might have been a decent. But Gwilym played queen c5 here, and after f takes e5, maybe not the best move here, but Gwilym played the incredibly risky queen takes d5, and yeah, obviously queen and rook are attacking the bishop, and well, we're getting ready to attack the pawn later, but of course, all of the pieces are hanging in the air there, and yeah, but it went very, very quickly somehow. I had the feeling that White sort of believed black quite quickly on this and played the move knight d3, after which black was just much, much better. I mean, John Spielman was looking at e6 in the commentary room. You go queen e6 with black, the idea being that takes, rook e6 allows rook d1, but there's queen takes d4 now, queen takes, and then, well, rook e2, queen h1 is rather irritating because it's threatening queen takes h6, but I think we thought that just bishop f3 in this position would be quite nice, queen e5, something like queen d2. And, you're threatening rook e2 and then coming into e7 and bishop d5. Felt like White had a nice initiative here. It's not actually the very best move. E takes f6 is the very best move, because after rook d1, you've got this gorgeous idea f7 check, rook f7, and then queen takes c8, which is going to be a gorgeous little mate there. Rook takes c8. So that was really, that was absolutely thrilling. There's even my idea. Unfortunately, I didn't. If I'd seen the brilliant continuation, I could have claimed it, of course, but I can't really. I was positive there was something good in this line for White, but I couldn't find it. But actually, the simple knight d3 is really great, because after takes, this rook is trapped. If you go to c4, I go bishop d5 check and pick up the exchange. So yeah, just short of genius there on my part. Well, knight d3 was played, and then takes, and bishop f3, queen d6, and it's obviously going to be quite difficult for White now. The best apparently was to double up on the d-file, starting with rook d2, rook d1, and then, well, actually just try and make this rook uncomfortable. And the engines were holding this, but yeah, it's not at all obvious to me, I can tell you. I mean, I think the only move that I would be considering here as White is the move that Ahluwalia played, which was g5. But actually, Gwilym found a very strong response to that. Bishop f5, takes, and then e4. And, well, there's a big fork here. f7 check was played, rook takes f7, so now this pawn is kind of pinned, obviously, because the knight on the 8 is loose, and White played the move knight c1. And here, yeah, Gwilym took a choice that in the commentary room we were fairly critical of. We just thought, knight f6 is safe. That's it. And well, the engines do sort of concur. They sort of feel that is indeed a good safe move. But they do actually say that e takes f3 is better. So it's just it's a risky idea, but in principle it's the strongest. This is a very strong pawn, and well, you're setting up basically to roll those kingside pawns down. The reason we were kind of a little bit worried about it really was because, yeah, there's yeah, the black king's kind of a little bit exposed here, and after queen d5 we were thinking queen b6. Are you really going to be able to, are you going to end up in some danger where White gets the queen onto the 7th rank and then mates you on g7? But the engine's supremely unconcerned here, really. I mean, basically, with this queen on d5, if you ever come to the 7th rank, the engines are really feeling that they've always got it under control. So, yeah, for example, I think queen d6, queen a7, queen d7 was the idea. And now after queen a5, which is obviously a natural move, then g5 is what they wanted. Just pushing the pawns. And if rook f3, you take on c2. Rook f3, and if queen g5 check, you go king f8, queen c5, rook d6, and you laugh at your opponent despite all the pins. because stuff like Queen C6 is going to unpin, basically. It's a little bit fraught, and requires some more calculation, but in principle, it's a good move. And to be honest, if I put my hand on my heart and I think back to my to my time as a chess professional, these were the type of lines that I went for when I was playing black. I didn't play the safe lines. If I thought that I had a bigger advantage by taking risks, I just went for it and believed in myself to do it. And Gwilym did that, and well, it worked out brilliantly. Because here white played queen takes d5, which is probably, objectively maybe not worse than queen b6, but I think it's really giving black a very clear way to play. And well, white played rook e3 here, and Gwilym played, I think, a very nice move. Well, it was my move as well. I think bishop g4 is also quite strong. Actually, the engine looking at playing the interesting idea bishop h5 and then letting the g pawn roll down, which is also very strong. But I thought that rook c5 was very nice here. Although I had actually missed a little tactic. Not rook ef3, after which I go rook c2. Rook takes, and then rook takes f2, which is very clever. But rook ff3 is closer than I'd realised, because I thought we were taking and going bishop d1 and winning the whole house. But actually, white can go knight d3 and attack the rook, takes, and knight c5. But here the power of bishop against knight tells, because king f7 is played. And if you take on a4, then the g pawn is just running home and having a whale of a time at the same time. So this was, I thought rook c5 was a very strong move. And well, white played knight d3, but now we take. C takes d3, giving the king some escape room. Rook f5. And now the g-pawn is just running. And we looked at a lot of lines in the game with the white king coming across and all sorts of stuff. But you were never quick enough. Just d4 here, g5, d5, g4, rook e7, rook g5, covering everything. And white resigned here. Because if you go d6, I go g3. And if you go rook f3, I don't even bother. I just go g2 and queen that pawn. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed that overall look at the Cobra Sicilian. I think we've got some of the most advanced analysis anywhere on this line. So yeah, I hope you join Gwilym and start playing it, because I think it's really nice line and full of interesting stuff and a lot of challenges for white. And I think that most white players will not be half as well prepared as you if you use these videos and the PGNs I've provided. And I hope you enjoyed this game as well. It was a very exciting game, very important for Cambridge. Really looked like it was going to give Cambridge the victory. A black win is worth its weight in gold in these matches. And yeah, I was very impressed actually with both players. I thought Ahluwalia prepared himself very well and played some nice stuff as well. This move bishop e2 to d1 was really nice. But I think somehow probably lack of recent playing experience told. I think just at the crucial moment. I think a time when you'd normally, if you were playing a lot, it would just flow very easily. A few more natural moves. Here Ahluwalia was sort of searching for a plan, and well, what Gwilym did was very, very aggressive. A5, a4. And took a little risk on queen c5 takes d5, but yeah, that risk turned out well and finished very, very nicely indeed. So there we are. Hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to try and cover some more of the Varsity match, because I had a whale of a time commentating, and I definitely think a lot of these games are really worth seeing. They were really high quality, really high class. So stay tuned for that, and otherwise why not give the video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel, take a look at my new book or Chessable course, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, and otherwise keep your eyes peeled for more videos. Hope to see you soon. Thanks for watching.